It was a poem that was written by my grandfather to my grandmother from the front lines of World War II. So it would be very apropos to recite it. It's written in German. I can translate it into English. It's moon, dear moon, you're luckier than I, because you can see him and not me, not I. Moon, dear moon, once I was luckier than you, because I could kiss him and you had to look on. And it does rhyme in German.
Oh,
But isn't that
that's
nice?
lovely.
Yeah.
That's really lovely.
So speaking of that, you know,
It's a good intro.
That's one of my.
segue.
I mean, I don't have any memory of my grandfather because he died before my mother was born, on the front lines, and which is actually also kind of apropos because we are celebrating 80 years of D-Day this year. So the head of the EACC is actually in Normandy. He's involved in some of those festivities. But so this is going to be a discussion about I almost said life and death. How to make the most out of life, and then plan ahead for the afterlife. And there is an afterlife when it comes to AI. AI enables you to have an afterlife, and this is, in a nutshell, the discussion of this program. It was conceived over lunch by Jen and myself, and there's a semi-empty chair. One of our panelists, the technology expert, is right now without any technology in a car on his way from Newark Airport to New York. So he's fighting the technology, which is a delayed delayed plane coming in from Houston. But in all seriousness, the living on in whatever form after you die has many shapes and many different. It's taking on many different forms in a world like today with AI, with social media. I recently received a reminder to congratulate a friend of mine who died last year to her work anniversary on LinkedIn. She did not make the plans that we are encouraging you to make today. These kind of situations become awkward, but it's more than that. There are positive aspects to this. The Chinese have developed so-called death bots that allow you to recreate a loved one as a chat bot and then have conversations with them. And I know, Marissa, you're rolling your eyes. Yeah, it's pretty creepy. I think so too. But I hope that Gustavo will arrive at least in time to talk to us about this. But the thing is, we have to take this serious. It's not only how you live on social media. It's also grieving is a process. It's people do it differently in different places. Family deal with grief differently. People deal with grief differently. And, if it's helping, why not? I mean, I think everybody kind of goes through it in a different way. And when I met Jen for the first time, we immediately connected. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was a St. Bridget's event at the Irish consulate. And I thought, man, I love this woman. Jen is you call yourself a memorial planner, but it's so much more. I mean, you're not just planning the memorial. You're also kind of helping people to plan out the memories, what they want to continue on in their how they want to be memorized. How they, want to engage with people when they pass and what happens at their funeral. And I'm sure all of you had the experience. You go to a funeral and it's just really awkward, and you wish that they had a Jen, and help, plan some of this ahead. And it's also, in the context of the EACC, if you migrate to a foreign country and your family is 8 hours away from you, it's much more difficult to die than if they're right next to you. And then, planning and looking ahead and thinking about these things is much more realistic. And we also have Chloe joining us today. Chloe is an attorney at Barton Thornburg, and we had a conversation about this topic, and when we got to meet each other, and she's like, "Oh my God, I want to be part of this conversation," because there are so many legal aspects to this. Can I just, it's like I'm using myself an example, and I hope that no one comes up, takes me up on this. But there's so many recordings of people online. Take Elvis. Can you just have him say whatever you want him to say by putting all of the recordings together, and then have him, say something, whatever it may be, positive or negative? And then if you're not Elvis, there is some protection, and we get into that in a minute, for celebrities, but what if you're a private person and somebody doesn't like your political opinions and puts words in your mouth, and those kind of things. And there are also all kind of pitfalls when it comes to family relations and all that. So you can see this is like a whole breadth of topics, but let's start with, and I'm starting with you, Jen. Living forever, with AI. What does it mean? What are we looking at?
Thinking about that. But living forever right now, it is such a topic. It can be, like we even just talked about Gustavo not being here, and I immediately was like, well, we could have a hologram of him here. You know what I mean? Like that's where we're going. And so living forever can mean a million different things to a million different people. And there's so many, it's such a hot topic at the moment, like legally, data protection wise. There's even talk of, when you go to hospital, you have your DNR. Like there's now a do not reanimate, like a kind of a version of that. I mean, because like you just said, you could take anybody's name, voice, their features, and just apply it to everything. Like Audrey Hepburn was in a Galaxy ad, and it was her face on an actress's body. And, it looked like it was Audrey Hepburn just driving in a car and enjoying Galaxy chocolate. And it's like, is that creepy? And that's the thing, it's to one person's creepiness is another person's, oh my God, that's amazing. Like Audrey Hepburn is back on screen. So the thing with living forever, I mean, as a memorial planner and as a funeral planner, I obviously get to see people at their worst, at their like, just rock bottom, their worst grief. It's the worst thing in the world to lose your loved one. Like, if you haven't, it's kind of incomprehensible. And honestly, even if you have lost somebody, you're not that person, and each of us grieves completely and utterly different. Like I've always said, a set of twins are never going to grieve the loss of a mother the same. We all have these different relationships with people, and that intricacy of how we deal with our grief applies to this entire death tech, grief tech, AI concept of, and I actually personally had an experience with this where, so what brought me into this business was I used to be a wedding planner, and 15 years ago, 2 friends of mine passed away, and it sort of catapulted me into the dark side of events. Clearly I'm in pink. I mean, I'm not really that dark, but it is the darker side that not really anybody wants to talk about. But with this topic that we were going to talk about today, and the start of AI, I turned to one of my friends, one of my best friends, who it was the loss of her brother, who was a friend of mine, who got me into this. And I said, how would you feel about having him speak to you? And she was like, oh God, no. Oh God, no, absolutely not. And because she was like, it would be fake. I would know it was not him. Like, he's dead. It's not real. And I said, I completely understand that. But I said, how would your mom feel about hearing her son just say something like, hey, mom? Just something simple like that. Hey, mom. now, and that's the Irish accent coming out of me, we say ma'am a lot instead of mom or whatever. But just, she was like, oh, yeah, that's a little bit different, right? So taking his voice and just turning it into something like, not him saying, hey ma'am, happy 50th birthday, wishing you all the best from heaven, not something like that, because my friend was like, no, that's ew, but just something simple like, hey ma'am. And that, to me, changing my friend's perspective from, oh God, no, this is creepy, to, oh, maybe she might like that. That's where we're going to find it's such a gray area. Like, what's my grief isn't Chloe's grief. My grief isn't Yvonne's grief. And we could all lose the same person, but we all just grieve totally differently. And you've got holograms, you've got vocal reenactments, you've already probably heard the million times of Alexa. It can be Morgan Freeman now and Melissa McCarthy and all these, people. But Alexa can apparently be your dead grandmother as well. Now, and I'm saying all of this, it's sounding quite negative, but there's positives to it too, because like, as you just said about your grandfather at the opening there, what would it be like though to maybe somehow have AI reenact him and him tell you the story of how he met your grandmother? That's kind of cool. So there's boundaries, like we can, history reenactments, like seeing people redo things right before our eyes where they look real. Like, I don't know if anybody has heard of the ABBA, you've obviously heard of ABBA, or at least I hope so, but like they're doing it's apparently not holograms, I'm not 100% sure, but they're doing concerts where they're not physically there in the UK. They're not physically there, but apparently it's incredible. So, and these are people who are still alive and obviously gave their consent and everything like that. So the whole living forever thing, the five senses, we've got touch, taste, smell, like where does the line stop? And, and I mean, I could keep talking, but I'll let you guys,
So
I don't know if you've any.
Chloe?
Yeah.
What's your take?
I mean, I agree. It's very subjective at the end of the day. I'll preface this now. There's literally no regulation on this at the moment because it's such a dark horse, and we're really in this gray area where when it comes to having to regulate private matters, it becomes very touchy and it becomes it's a very personal issue, and it's hard to create laws on that. That said, to some of your points, Jen, like, I think even before AI became a buzzword, we were doing things to hold on to people who have died in the past. Like in my own experience, I've kept text messages from people who have passed, just so once in a while, if I want to be remembered of them, I can go look at it. Or if I'm just going through my phone, I just see it pop up and I'm like, great memories with this person. Another example is people keep phone messages, or some people leave the phone still connected so that you can contact their voicemail and you can hear their voice. So like in my personal opinion, I think those are healthy outlets for grieving and remembering people. But then there comes a point where, have you really crossed the line with AI in trying to bring these people back to life instead of letting yourself go through the grieving process and move on? I mean, I think that's an innate part of being human. And if we're always holding on to the past, then when are we actually going to take that next step and grow from it?
Yeah, it's that, and you're leading us right into the next question. And there are ethical issues. There's opportunity for abuse. There's data-related issues. There are privacy-related issues. So I don't know if you want to start with some of the privacy and data-related issues, and then Jen, if you want to talk about some of the ethical concerns that are coming up.
Yeah, so I think where I'll start is there are data protections and privacies that are clearly outlined for living people. And some laws, like the GDPR, that will say these apply to living persons. So when a law specifically calls that out, it leaves us to question, well, like, what if you're dead? But we also may not even think about the fact that if you have a right to privacy or you have a right to be forgotten when you're living, what happens when we die? So a lot of regulation around aspects of our privacy come from more of a state level. In the US specifically, we have California, for example, who's more so at the front in the US sphere of doing data privacy rights. When it comes to our privacy after death, there's nothing specific on privacy after death. However, states like California and Utah, Connecticut, they're starting to go through the process of submitting bills to their legislators where they're trying to regulate AI. And the way they're trying to regulate AI is, well, how do we define an AI system? And if you hit like a certain level of risk or you're practicing certain types of activities with that AI, how do we want to keep track of what you're doing? How do we want to make sure you're not overstepping certain bounds?
But it doesn't even need to go with AI. I mean, you can just
Correct.
cut together, video clips or something that is available from either a husband or somebody you really can't stand, and then abuse the family or somebody else. I mean, this can be used for wonderful things, but it can also be used in a really abusive way.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always have to be artificial intelligence to be involved. It's just like the technology, recordings, whatever you have that might be out there.
Yep. And to add on that, I really think AI is just a buzzword. It's artificial intelligence, it's training models using loads and loads and loads of data. And my background is computer science. I'm an intellectual property attorney. I deal with software clients every single day. And my clients have been building machine learning models or algorithms that that are not even called artificial intelligence algorithms that do what we call AI today. So it's something that's been around for a really, really long time. I think we just have this new buzzword that makes everyone think, oh my God, this is something new and exciting and unknown. But to that point, machine learning models that were developed a couple years ago or before AI was a thing could do just as you said. It can collect a whole bunch of videos and it can produce some sort of output, like a new video of a particular person saying something that you train the model to make it say.
Yeah.
Which is terrifying.
And I mean, it became popular with the chatbots. So that you have like this direct interaction with a machine where the person is really taken out and the person is replaced by the machine, so to say. Not 100%, but kind of.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's I've always said this, with everything good that human beings create comes with it some bad. Like the internet is a prime example of that. And I do think this further learning of the internet and technology and what it can do is another step in that direction. It's terrifying because, even this recording, I mean, we're live streaming right now. Like somebody could take my voice and they could call up my parents and sort of say, we've kidnapped your daughter. They probably say, keep her. But anyway, and they could ask for $10,000. And okay, my mum might say, okay, she's feeling very unemotional and she's watched all her crime shows, she might say, we need proof of life, and then they'll play my voice. And so now, and I'm not even joking, this is a legitimate conversation I had with my parents where I said, here's a question you're going to ask me, and here's the answer. Obviously I'm not going to say this because you could all kidnap me, but it's a problem, right? Well, exactly. You'd give me back, I promise. But it's a serious problem, right? There was in the New York Times, I think it was only at the start of this year, or maybe it was last year, there was a gentleman who passed away, and it's a funeral home I work with, and he passed away, and all of a sudden, these AI, but there was people behind it, but the AI technology created hundreds and hundreds of articles about this man's death, completely false. He happened to accidentally fall in front of a train, but they were saying he got stabbed. They basically picked up on another news article saying that he got stabbed, and they just started creating all this. And so if you were, which is what happens when somebody passes away. So if I pass away, I've killed myself off many times, obviously doing what I do, my poor parents. If I die tomorrow and somebody puts in Jennifer Muldowney death, right, to try and find some information about maybe the service or what happened to me or whatever. And that's what these people did, and they suddenly come up with all of these fake stories. So now you've got people either ringing the funeral home up with all this fake information or like spreading it to in person to people. And so there's a lot of issues with it. Whether it's kidnapping, blackmail, but it's also misrepresentation. Like, and we're not going to get into it because that's a whole other topic, but even politically, I could, apparently Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I'm always getting that wrong, they took her voice and they put opinions on certain legal issues that she would never have said, that her own clerk said that she would never have said, and they actually said that she, this AI of her was implying that she said it. So at what point do we become what's real and what's fake? And that's the terrifying thing, is this particular instance was this poor young man lost his life. That's hard enough as it is as a family to have to deal with. But now you're dealing with fake obituaries. In Ireland, where I'm from, in case anybody doesn't know, where in Ireland, there's a huge problem with people asking for money to view a live streamed service. Huge problem. So people are kidnapping or whatever, taking over the web page, and they're saying that, you have to give us $20 to see this, and they're pretending to be the funeral home. Like, how heartbreaking is that for a family to have to deal with that when you've already lost your child? Like, that's just crazy. So there is a lot of issues, but there is a lot of really good stuff as well. And I kind of went on a bit of a tangent there, but anyway, clearly I'm passionate about it.
Let's see, we're holding on for a second because Gustavo is joining us, and we're getting right into the technology question of this. Because the thing is, the difference that AI makes is really the speed and the amount of information that can be processed to create whatever someone either nefarious or well-intended is working with. Gustavo, thank you so much.
Sorry, I was 4 hours ago. I was in Texas, and we had a tornado. The flight was delayed. Sorry.
So now you're here. Gustavo Martin Vela. He's a professor of data engineering at IE University.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just talking about the ethical issues and also the unintended consequences around the use of AI for in the context of bereavement and grief, chatbots.
Yeah.
How can they be abused? How can they help? And I would like to think that a chatbot is a well-intended tool, but I personally use them, and I think they're actually rather dumb. But it's not that smart what comes out of their mouth.
Okay. Well, I think that one of the main concerns here, technologically talking, is about the bias generated in the chatbots. What's about the bias? Maybe the chatbot has only the good things of something, or the bads. Okay, this generate a bias, and with this bias you interact with this bias. Okay, imagine that the bias is racial, for example. You need to interact with a chatbot that is racial, maybe, and I think that this is one of the main concerns, technologically talking.
Yeah, and then you bring me right to, I'm sure that those of you in New York read the New York Times and all heard the story of Kevin Rose, who chatted with a chatbot who then tried to convince him that he needs to divorce his wife.
Yeah.
And which I still think is like really cute, and if you think about it. I mean, it's idiocy, it's cute and it's idiocy. And we call this now that we know that this is happening, we call it what do we call it?
Bias?
Hallucination.
Hallucinations, yeah.
Hallucination. So the thing is, bias is a problem to start with, because if these grief chatbots that are created in China, and grief in China, or in Asia, I should say, in Asian cultures, is managed completely different than grief in other Western cultures, that already may be an issue with interacting with a Chinese, grief bot. But then on top of it comes the technological bias And maybe they learn, but maybe they don't learn. But if they learn when they start hallucinating, then it becomes like really dangerous because
Yeah.
now we're looking at abuse.
Yeah. I remember another thing that happens I think in Finland 10 years ago related to Google Maps. When Google Maps start to doing the things, doing in the right way, some people goes, for example, to lakes or with the car because the Google Maps hallucinate, like is hallucinating, and the people goes directly to the directions that Google Maps says.
Instead of looking through.
Yeah, and for
I follow Google Maps.
this is
I never follow
yeah,
them.
I
It's kind of like transgressional.
yeah.
You hear what the thing is telling you. And speaking of impersonation, my sister-in-law has like a Zen guru type, doing the GPS, and it's just hysterical. I mean, and you can have so much fun. If you wish to be relaxed, you take a ride at the next.
I love that.
It's hysterical. It's hysterical.
Well, actually, I want to touch a bit on the bias as well, because it's not just bias with the technology reading and stuff. It's also like the majority of things that, okay, so I don't know anybody in this room, what your technology abilities are. But most likely some of you are on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, things like that, right? Those were all created for like instant gratification, and they were most predominantly created by white males. And so there's the bias also in terms of the way they've dealt with death and bereavement and what happens to profiles on it, like Elon Musk culling the dead the second he got up to X. Don't even get me started. But there's bias there in terms of how they're dealing with it and what does the average consumer look like, but also then in terms of like what I do for a living, who can afford to, as we started the conversation, live forever? And what does that look like? Like there's bias all the way through this, and it's putting things like pay gap, racial gaps, things like that, it's only going to make them sort of worse and kind of crazier, unless we have some sort of legal, which
Get me right to it. I mean, if you talk to my husband, the nexus is approaching, and we are about 5 years away from living pretty much forever. Forever meaning like 300 years or something, versus dying at 85. Or younger.
Push back on the bias. Technically, if you had a data set that had, let's say, bias from both spectrums, then couldn't you train the model towards a more neutral tone?
You can try to do it with some techniques, okay, but it's not very easy because you don't have this data. You need to simulate data.
Okay.
Or you need to generate, new data that is more neutral, and it's not easy. Okay.
And so that goes towards generative AI techniques, would you say, or?
With generative AI you can, but typically you generate with some statistics techniques. Okay. GenAI is statistics with another name, more or less. Okay, but you can do it, but it's not very. The result is not very fine, or it's not very.
Statistics.
Yeah, the reason I brought that up is because, like, from a legal front, a lot of questions come around once you die. Can your data then be used for training? So can images of you be used to train and improve AI models? But then it becomes a question of, well, is that right? Like, and in that sense, the person would have to consent to it. Do we take questions?
Yeah, for sure.
I think we have one.
Oh,
yeah.
My name is Brianna. I graduated from just to introduce myself. Also, it depends probably on your own output as a living person. So you probably are writing far more than I am, and you are leaving a greater legacy in the world in that sense, and more data for an AI to be created afterwards than I. But then a very public person, like let's say, I'm going to use, because I was thinking about Charlie Munger here, because he died. And he was a great mind, a great business mind, someone whose output you probably would want to preserve and recreate in a persona of an advisor. you probably don't want him to die, but there's a lot of written material from him that can be used to create something like this. So for you, actually, Chloe, something to think about maybe legally, where is that line then? Can the line be drawn between, like, what is the public person then, and what is the private person?
Yeah.
No, it's who benefits from the consistent continuing advisory.
Correct.
Is a question for that as well. I mean, gets me right into my next question. What's the regulatory framework for that in the US and in Europe?
Yeah. Well, there are rights to privacy. Those really stem out of Europe. Europe has been more at the forefront of data privacy rights and how we handle our data. In the US, there's not so much. So there's some, like a right to be forgotten, for example. So you can explicitly say that you don't want to be remembered. So your data won't be reused once you die, or after a certain amount of time, your data is destroyed. Yeah.
Sounds brutal.
Yeah.
I don't want to be remembered.
But based on my experience, I was in the, I am old, okay, and I was in the different regulations in Europe, okay. The last one is the GDPR from May 2017, I think, more or less, okay. Yeah, you can delete your data, but it's not totally true, because you can anonymize your data and try your model with data that is not totally is anonymized or pseudo-anonymized, okay, and this is allowed, okay, because of that, I think that we can train with data that maybe the people wants to delete too. And in USA, I think that is more easier than Europe, but in Europe sometimes it's difficult.
Yep.
Yeah, but then you have the abuse right away. I mean, in the case of your example, you use somebody's knowledge and old shared or wisdom shared in the past, which could be wisdom for the future, and utilize that information for future advice. But then the question is, how do the parents or the family benefit from that? Once you anonymize the information, then you really don't know where it's coming from. But that's when the hallucinations happen.
Yeah.
No?
But you can, you can anonymize, but you can group. For example, you can have a group like intellectual people, and in intellectual people you mix different intellectual people, and you have an idea about the things that the intellectual people says. Okay, usually
Isn't that creating a bias?
Yeah, it can create a bias. Yeah.
You're creating a bias again.
Yeah, but if you want to make a test, or if you want to make a test, ChatGPT. ChatGPT now has the version 4.0. Okay, with this version and the others, you can interact via voice, and you can, for example, in my when I walk, okay, I sometimes chat via voice with ChatGPT, and I say, okay, try to be like Edison, and I make questions to ChatGPT and try to give me different response like Edison. Why? Because has some information in Wikipedia, in some other system, like and he knows how Edison think or something, and you can try it. This is the first version.
I mean, it's not really how Edison thinks, it's what Edison's output was after he thought. I mean, you can't get into the brain. I mean, we always think we can get into the brain. We can't get into the brain. That's biological, but what the output was after the thinking. But then again, don't you have intellectual property? That I mean, isn't that an intellectual property, that whatever output, that Edison created with whatever thought?
Yeah. Well, that's where copyrights come into play.
Yeah.
Because copyrights, I mean, if it's a likeness of the person, or if it's the actual production of their work, or even if it's a derivative, which means it started with the original work and then they expanded on it. All of those would fall under the realm of copyright, where whoever is the owner can then, seek damages, as we would say. So.
But Edison is like over 100 years passed, so.
Right. It would no longer apply at that point. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, but nobody waits that long. I mean, you saw that. No, I mean, the reality is that what happened with it just recently, everybody is like, again, it's a regulatory issue. You know, everybody, I mean, everybody meaning, you know, the alphabets and the Microsofts and everybody, OpenAI, everybody is getting ahead of the, trying to get ahead of the competition. And what they do is they one of them, I think, was it OpenAI? You know, snug into YouTube and stole all that, you know, downloaded all the language, all the transcription of YouTube's videos, and is turning and then teaching their AI with the content of Google. No? So hallelujah, you know. I mean, isn't that a copyright violation? Who owns the copyright?
It depends because it depends on who is the owner, like you said, but also if it's free use, for example.
Yeah.
If someone just submits it to the open and claims it as free use, then you're not infringing.
Yeah, but then you also have like all the singers and the Rolling Stones and everybody,
Right.
you know, who was probably grabbed alongside of that. But
Well,
we have a question, yeah.
I'm Diane Roskies. All right, I have a loud voice. I am a trust and estate attorney, and I will go from the sublime back to the ridiculous, if you don't mind for a moment. This is basically a question for Jennifer. For many years, I have avoided using the D word. Almost the worst thing I ever say to a client is, if you die. I didn't want that. But I try not even to say that. Am I correct? What can you see? If you are no longer with us, what would you like your vacation? What should become of your vacation if you are no longer with us? What is the proper?
Well, to answer your question, and actually there was something I wanted to say just in the midst of that amazing discussion there is, what I would like to say is, where I will come from is that person that you're talking about, no matter who they are, they're still a human being. And that's what, like, I try and get, like, I've worked with really high profile families, and like, it doesn't matter really what they presented to the world. At the end of the day, it was a dad, a son, a brother, a mother, a sister, whatever it was. And so it's talking about, like, even if you think of somebody like Whitney Houston or Elvis, as we've mentioned before, it's about, like, you know, that was still a human being. And so we have to be respectful of that. And whatever tech comes along, we still have to be respectful of that. And this is exactly to your point. It's, people don't even like to talk, like I said it earlier today, you know, dead. People don't like to say the D word. It's, they've passed on, they've gone into another room, they've gone to a better place, they've left us. Like, I actually opened my first book with talking about how I got into the business, and I was like, you know, I lost 2 friends. Well, no, I didn't lose them. Like, I won't find them again, you know what I mean, in another room. Do you know what I mean? They're dead, like, they're gone. But I will say that in my role with what I do, one of the biggest things, and just to like join those two questions together or conversations together, is it's about the humanness of it. It's just about, where's that person at? Like, this person that I'm talking to, are they ready for me to say the dead word or the die word? Maybe they're not ready. Maybe let them give you what they need to say. I mean, coming from an estate attorney point of view, you hopefully will have built up a relationship with this person. So what do they feel comfortable with saying? Like, you nearly almost have to massage the conversation to guide them into the room of talking about, if somebody is not ready to talk about them dying, they're not ready to talk about it. And it doesn't matter. Unfortunately, that makes your life really difficult as an estate attorney. Never mind the digital footprint, but the actual, like, having a will and all the property and everything, they're not ready to talk about it. And until they're ready, there's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I do workshops trying to get people to introduce the idea to their aging parents and stuff like that. And I do these workshops in a light-hearted way. And what I say to people, and is blame me. Like even all of you here tonight, right? Genuinely, I don't care. I'd rather you blame me and I'm the bad person. But like that you go home and whoever's at home, your partners or whatever, just say, oh my God, there was this crazy lunatic today. And she was talking about your digital footprint and she was talking about, and trust me, there's some crazy things I can talk about, as Yvonne knows. Like there's human composting and you can have your final spa and there's all of this sort of crazy stuff. Use me and just be like, what do you think of that, Mom? Do you want to be buried or cremated? Or did you know there's this? And it's just introducing it in a lighthearted way is just a way to sort of start the conversation, because it is a big conversation we need to have. Like I touched on it earlier, all your social media accounts. I don't know if many of you know, but there's a legacy account for every single one of those. My mom is, God bless her, is going to get all my emails if I croak it. She's going to get all my stuff. My best friend is going to get access to my Facebook account. But these things are all super important. But there are light-hearted ways to sort of bring it in. And whether it's saying, and it doesn't even have to be, like if you're not ready to do it tonight, you can say you saw me 2 weeks from now and you had lunch with a crazy lady or whatever. It's just about bringing the conversation up in a real way. And you can use things like popular culture to do it as well. Like I was only watching the movie recently, I don't know if anybody's seen it, where they had, I forget the name of it, but Anthony Hopkins is in it. It's Freud and C.S. Lewis. Has anybody seen that on Netflix? Anyway, I was watching this thinking, oh my God, this is a really cool movie, and assuming it's factual, and it's not. So they never actually met in real life. And so this was the, movie maker's idea of imagining these two people together. And that's what can happen to all of our identities, is people saying, oh, well, I imagine Jennifer stayed in the wedding business, and so let's create that storyline around her and stuff. So it's a really important conversation to have, is the point. I've gone off topic a little bit. It's not an easy one to bring up, whether you're an estate attorney or you're just talking to mom and dad at the dinner table. I'm happy to talk to anybody who wants to do workshops and stuff like that, but yeah, it's not easy.
But gets us right to the next topic, which is, how to deal with legally with your digital identity. So, and that's a question for you, Chloe.
How do you, what's the regulation right now? How do you not only plan for it, but also get the right to it, no? Get access to it, plan ahead on some of these things. How do you give access to an email account to your husband? Whom do you trust with those kind of accounts?
Yeah.
What's legal?
Yeah, so it's
environment?
best practices. Right now, as Jen brought up, legacy accounts is a very hot thing that companies like Meta are doing. And I think that's starting to introduce us to the concept that we're all going to die, but our data is still going to be there. So it's kind of preparing us to realize and accept that, kind of inadvertently, that, okay, like we have to cope with death at some point, even if we're 18 years old and have an Instagram account versus 65. So legacy accounts, it's totally optional. You can set it up or you don't have to. If you set up an account, you're basically consenting for whoever you designate to be able to go into your account and do as you want them to do with your account. So you can expressly write in your will, trust, etc., I want Jen to go into my Instagram account and keep it up and running. Or I want her to delete every single photo from my Instagram but keep the account up. Or I want her to shut down the entire account. So you have to expressly lay out how you want your data being used and what's going to happen to you after you die.
You can't assign somebody and then let them do whatever they feel like?
I mean, it's best practices, so you
Okay.
could, but I would hope that your attorney is going to say, we need a little more detail than that.
Okay.
Because then they can really go and abuse. And the
Yeah.
question is, do you want them doing that? And I think that's where it becomes harder to talk about death now. It's because, in the past, when you died, you just died, and that was it. But now it's like, well, technically I'm dead, but I'm not dead because all my stuff is still out there. So it's a whole new level of death that I think is harder to understand and it could be more of a sensitive topic in a way, because it's just so much more to think about.
But there are different layers to this. So there's
Correct.
you're dead, and then nothing happens to your account. No additional information is out there. There is somebody else keep putting additional information out there, and if it may just be about the funeral. And then there is there another option? Oh, and then and then it's the meta and the alphabets, grabbing your data and then doing something else with it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and not only this, not only Meta, not only Alphabet. All the times we have spiders in the web, and it's taking your data without your consent because you publish your data, and this data you don't know about this data. You don't know, who have to delete this data.
Yeah. And the GDPR does set some rules or guidelines about once a person dies, securely doing something with their data. So it could be securing it, I don't remember the exact details, but securing it for a certain amount of time, and then I think potentially removing it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can expressly consent for, the day I die, all this data goes, or from the day I die on, I want my data available. So there's always those caveats. If you expressly say something through your wills and estates and trusts, then you can.
And it becomes even more important as well the more you are online.
Yeah.
And the more recent you are, like say
today,
and you pass away in the next decade or 2 decades. But like if you are a celebrity or an influencer, which is obviously huge now, you need to start thinking about who has access to your data after you go. So if you're an influencer for, I don't know, chocolate seems to be on my brain today, but if you're an influencer for chocolate, are they still allowed to use your data, your likeness in future ads and stuff like that? And who benefits monetarily from that? So if you're like, I don't know if anybody in this room is an influencer or, some sort of a celebrity, it's very important for you to protect your data and really explicitly say, do not reanimate, do not do anything with me afterwards.
including don't reanimate the data. I want to get a little bit more into the technical aspects of this. What if there's what about hacking? Hacking into chatbots and some of the grief-related technology. I mean, because that can. It's like I like to think of people as good, in general and in particular. But there's some really nasty people out there, and they could, you depend on a chatbot to grieve or whatever you're working with, and then someone hacks into it, and then what?
And not only the people. Today we have many people without technical knowledge that can hack things using AI, the same AI that you can use. I read 2 weeks ago about one person that hacked something in Thailand, I think. And the police take this person, and after some investigation, this person don't have any knowledge, any technical knowledge, hack with AI. And today it's more easy to hack the things.
So I think to quickly touch upon that, in Europe they did come out with the AI Act, which is their attempt this year to start regulating AI. And they classify AI use through different tiers of risk. So there are certain levels of risk which would result in completely prohibiting those types of activities.
All right.
So examples include exploiting human vulnerabilities, exploiting human behaviors, or trying to manipulate human behaviors. So things like that, I think, if it becomes more accepted, if the board that they created through the AI Act in Europe actually starts doing its work and, overseeing these sorts of applications, maybe it's something that could be prevented, but I think we're still a long way out from actually implementing that sort of protections.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's also, when you're grieving, you're specifically vulnerable. And then if somebody is hacking into, and it could be, on a large and on a small scale. It's just like a nightmare scenario during COVID where so many people died. If we had these grief bots back then, and then some foreign actor, I'm painting out a crazy scenario here, and I hope it's crazy. I have some wood. Can somebody knock on wood? And then in a large scale, let's say the NIH created like this grief bot, and then someone, hacks into it and then misguides or manipulates like large parts of the population. I mean, that's like a real nightmare scenario. But is that possible, or? Oh, gee, I wish it was.
The thing is,
That question again.
in hacking, in AI, and in these things, all the things are possible. The difficulty is time. You need time to do it. Maybe if you have money and time, you can do it. Without money and time, you cannot do it. Or depending on the money that you generate with these actions.
Yeah.
Okay.
And now that we have open source, thanks to Zuckerberg, it's easier to hack into it.
Yeah. It's really easy. For example, in my server, in my house, I have some things like that. Not to do bad things, to do good things. To do good things and to teach. For example, my students wants to know about this technology, and they learn with these kind of things. But to do the good things and to understand the system behind. Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, with
And-
questions.
We had another question, yeah. Nope.
So I really like the idea of
Is it on?
using data for good. And it was
Thinking about
really,
the phone.
it's not on?
We can hear you.
It's only for the.
For those watching on live.
So basically my idea would be, my question would be for Gustavo. So how, if we have a lot of information, a lot of input, like let's say, from Kofi Annan, right?
Yeah.
Until he died from late 30s until 2015, something like that. If we had that amount of information, could we create a Kofi Annan avatar that
Yeah.
could support and help us, like with some of the geopolitical situations that we could be having right now? How accurate could we create someone that
Okay. Yeah. It's
has left a big legacy? I really like that idea because he became who he was because of all the things that he lived. So could we kind of continue forecasting his life until now?
Yeah.
And create something?
Yeah, you can do it, but you can do it.
My face.
Yeah, but you can do it, and the people is doing in this moment. For example, companies like investment companies, very big investment company has their advisors, the AI advisor that say, okay, you need to sell this, you need to buy this. It's the same, okay? You, for example, if you have enough data, you can duplicate this person, okay? But you need to know that this person is not only their commentaries, their comments are more things, okay? Their love, for example, is not so easy to duplicate, okay? But totally, and in this moment, we have these kind of things, okay? For example, in the university, in the IE, we have a chatbot. Maybe you don't know, but we have a chatbot to chat with the students that try to be like me or like other professors. Okay, we train this chatbot, and yeah. Okay.
How do you train it? How do
It's-
you modify it? Do you get feedback back from the students? And
Yeah, this thing is interesting because if you train a professor, it's very easy. The only thing that the chatbot needs to know is not my behavior, is about the course. For example, if I teach artificial intelligence, I need to teach the chatbot about all the knowledge that I have about this thing. Okay, and this chatbot has a generative AI that can generate some new things, okay, but based on my knowledge. Okay, but this is very, very, yeah, it's not very wide. It's okay.
with some caveats when students are receiving
Yeah.
information to say, don't think this is Gustavo, this is his knowledge. On
Yeah. It's the knowledge that I give to the chatbot, and in the case of Kofi Annan, can be similar, okay? But without coffee. That is the thing, okay?
And
Yeah,
to,
but then can't you create the perfect husband? I mean, so
Yeah.
you create the perfect.
You have no.
And but the thing is, I mean, so and we're just replacing with stuff.
Yeah, totally.
And we could have done
Totally.
your hologram, you know, while you were still on your way from the airport. I mean, it's like you know, and then you just put all the guys you like into the chatbot, and then what?
I mean, it's like we're getting right to the next point, which is what's technically possible.
I have a very interesting thing. I work for Google some month for Waymo. Waymo is the taxi, the autonomous taxi, and the autonomous taxi has an AI. I was working in an AI that seems like a taxi driver, the perfect taxi driver, and they have the perfect taxi driver. Okay, that greet you all the time with always is in a good mood. Okay, and yeah.
But so,
It's like the perfect husband, the perfect taxi driver.
but so I would.
Taxi driver, you know.
But it comes down to though, like it's like what I said about grief though. It comes down to we're all so individual though. What's the perfect taxi driver for you might not be the perfect taxi driver for me.
Totally.
And when it comes to political figures, even more so because I don't even like again. I don't want to bring it up, but like today, you know, there might be people who are so far in the Trump field, and then there are people who are so far in the Biden field, trying to convince them that they should listen to an AI version of the other one. It's just, it's recreating somebody in, you know, it comes with their good and their bad. Like there's nobody in this world, in this room that's perfect. It's just completely, we're all perfectly imperfect. And that's what makes us all so incredible and makes this world amazing. And I mean, creating the perfect husband or wife or whatever, like a lot of these AI bots have tried to do it. And seriously, some like there's Replica, which is one of the, they create like these people for you to talk to become a best friend. And honestly, there's some amazing attributes to it. Because I know a lot of people in this world, and we're in LGBTQ plus month, there's a lot of people in this world who are hiding from their true selves. And so creating an AI bot that they can converse with on a nightly basis when they feel alone and that they're out to is amazing, right? There's so many benefits to this. Yeah. But then, because of course we're human beings and we can't do everything right, there's the dark side of the internet, and there's the dark people who are attracted to this very same app that's giving joy and incredible companionship to people, and they're creating literally girlfriends that they can, not physically obviously, but that they can verbally abuse. Yeah. Because that's what they want to do with their life. So it's like everything with the good and all these amazing things with AI, it's going to come the bad, and the law is never going to catch up with it probably. I mean, not in our lifetime.
It's like a brother and a sister, you know, they have the same parents, they're not the same person, and they probably, even if they're twins, you mentioned that earlier in the conversation, they don't grow up the same way. And then also if the bot is learning, then they learn your personality, and then they're different to you than they are with somebody else. And the back and forth is different. And quite honestly, but that's not so different from being a human, because the way I know you is different than other people know you, and they may have a completely different impression of you than others. So are we just creating, this is one of the next programs that we're working on. What happens to randomness once we have all this artificial intelligence? Because the OI, the original intelligence up here, is what allows us, what we allow random. Does AI allow random?
Yeah, not random, pseudo-random, but
controlled
here
random.
I have thing. We are very egocentric or egocentric, and for these kind of things we think that AI cannot do something, but I think that with computation and with the sensors or the data that you need, you can do whatever you want with the AI. AI is like your original intelligence. Okay.
Yeah, but the thing is, again, it freaks me out, and here, Chloe, for you to come in, because I am less concerned about the interaction that we have with a chatbot, because I think, and Kevin Rose wrote about this again recently. He created a couple of friends, friend thoughts, I guess, or whatever you call them. And he had like different types of friends, like the advisor friend, and then the trainer friend, and other type of friends. And his final conclusion was they all were kind of lame in the end, and not real friends. And where I'm heading with this is there's what I'm much more concerned about is where all that data goes. Because I interact with this chatbot, and hundreds of people, millions of people conceivably interact with this chatbot. That data goes someplace. It's not lost.
No.
Somebody's recording this, and then it trains. Does it only train my bot, or does it train, Chloe's bot as well?
Sometimes.
Can I influence Jen's bot with what I say to mine? Are they connected with one another? Can we create like a bot family?
You can do it. For example, you can influence the bot with your data, with your response. Yeah, I have another thing in my mind that is related to Google Maps too. That is very similar to the AI when Google Maps create. One artist put so many mobile telephones in a way to make the other drivers go for another way. Okay, you can hack these kind of things. For example, in the case of Google Maps, you can put many mobiles in the freeway to hack and and Google Maps think that there are many cars and say, here you have many cars and you need to go in another way.
Wow. I know that we have somebody who's listening to the live stream. Hi, Bob. Whose skin is crawling right now when you say that. Okay, on that happy note.
Is it Bob or is it his AI Bob?
No, it's a real Bob. And hi. So we talked about. We talked. Let's finish up a little bit on something that we discussed earlier with biases, because we're creating these bots now with Western technology, Western people, Western minds. How is this all going to affect, and is there some regulation? Is there some technology angle that we need to consider when it comes to grief in other cultures and connections, conversations in other cultures? Are there legal aspects to this? Equality, human rights.
The first thing is, when you take data, you select the data. When you select, you have a bias.
Yeah.
Okay. And today, this is a very, very interesting topic. All the people are saying that, for example, if you need to use OpenAI in Africa, for the African people, it's not so useful. Many things, because it's trained with Western data. Yeah. Okay. And how can we fix this with different data from other people? Okay.
But it will be a delay, no? It will be an obvious delay, because we don't have as much recordings from.
YouTube.
I mean, if you just look at YouTube, or other data on the internet, I mean, what's the percentage? Let's use Africa or Asia or Western societies. What are the percentages of that?
Yeah.
And it's not only that; it's also, am I training my chatbot with the internet, or am I training my chatbot with the dark web?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's different.
Well, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but also, like any of this AI, it's only as good as the information you feed it, right? So like, and I'm happy to put myself out there for that fact that I did this, but my very, very, very first interaction with my AI nearly got me arrested. Because I was like, okay, let me try this ChatGPT stuff. And so, oh God, yeah. And so I put in how to compost a human body. Because I thought, well, here, like, let's get this explained to me by chat. It's supposed to be this amazing thing. And so I put that in. And basically it came back and said, please seek help. And it came back with the whole thing.
And
so
it wasn't
because
an
it didn't
undertaker.
have the data about that, right? Because that's such a new technology and a new form of disposition. It didn't have the information. It probably has now, but like it didn't have it back then. And so it's only as good as so like even for me or anybody try it tonight, like put in how to have a funeral or whatever you want to do, and it does it from a Western point of view. It doesn't do it from an Irish point of view. It doesn't, it doesn't put in my cultural aspects to it. If I asked it to, it might, but it does it very much from a US point of view. So
And I think the AI also, or the people creating it, are setting up certain guardrails.
yeah.
So if you ask questions
Don't
that
send
may
me
be
there.
illegal, it's
Yeah.
going to tell you, and it's not going to give you the answer you're looking for.
Yeah.
So there are,
Depending on who produces the chatbot.
right,
Yeah.
if you're working with ChatGPT, it's going to tell you it's illegal. That's the only one I've tested. So yeah, so there are some guardrails that are out there already, aside from not having the correct data.
Yeah.
We have a question there.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you for having us first of all. My name is Daniela. I'm currently an intern at the UN, so I'm very glad that you brought the human rights perspective. My question is from the regulation frameworks that you guys mentioned about the GDPR. So, like, know that's a EU framework, so what kind of framework applies for the US or other countries? If this framework applies for the US also, like, how can this perspective, as you guys mentioned, the westernized perspective, affects the interaction of data with human beings, and how can you regulate, how far can be the regulation stipulated for either is a public person or a private entity?
Good question.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the GDPR applies to people who are inside of Europe. I know, like, the AI Act that I mentioned before applies to uses of AI within Europe. It doesn't matter where the AI was developed. It's just the fact that if it's being used or the person who's using it is in Europe, then that framework's going to apply. Aside from the GDPR, there are some data privacy laws in the US which would apply a similar framework, but in the US. So the frameworks will be more nuanced for the specific country or region or continent in that regard.
And it's also, I think, now I'm not a lawyer, so you might, but I know in the US, which does always crack me up, with the United States of America, but it's with as far as I know, it's state by state. So there's no federal rule, it's state by state, but even then more trickier than that is it's also company by company. So your Meta, which is your Facebook and your Instagram, might have certain rules that this is what we allow. Snapchat have certain rules that it's just account deletion. They don't keep the account. X/Twitter, Elon Musk, they just get rid of you. And so all of these have their own sort of little ideas of what it is. So they're kind of regulating themselves. And when you sign those, which we all blindly do, the T's and C's, boop, and don't read them, which we should. And actually that's a great use for AI, is summarizing those things. I've learned that. But is, you've signed away that this is your data. And so it's usually death certificates you have to provide, or some sort of proof, because otherwise they could be, it could be just some guy saying, it could be some person saying that such and such is dead. But they have to have proof, so death certificate and things like that. So yeah, so it's kind of tricky here because it's not United States. So it's state by state and then platform by platform, right?
And the regulations go across borders depending on where the business is being practiced, where it's being used. A good example with regards to the GDPR is, if you notice when you go to websites, there's a pop-up about cookies. That stems from the GDPR in Europe. And most American websites, for example, are going to have that because they touch at least one person or that's part of the EU. So that's why we're seeing that across all of our websites, because we have to tell them that we're collecting their data, we're storing it, or we're disposing of it, whatever it is. And of course, we just click through it. But all they have to do, all the company has to do to satisfy the GDPR requirement in that regard is just have that pop up and give them the option to click and view more.
Yeah.
Well,
Or to say only allow the essential cookies.
Correct, which is what is essential.
only
Yeah,
a
so-
reflection here, okay? In the future, the AI will be more important, and the states will have some state that has the different regulation will have different AIs. Okay, we create different AIs, and the state with the best AI will be maybe the state with more slow regulations or not so hard, okay? Because they will start to train with more data, and they will start to use the AI in another way, in a very in a more difficult way.
So
That
interesting.
you're saying that as a Spaniard.
No, but
No, I find it interesting.
but it's
because
like
normally there's no regulation and let's self-regulate.
Yeah,
It's a very American thing.
yeah, I know. But it's like China. China with the industrial revolution start to get big or to go to grow up. Okay, it's the same. Okay, it's not industrial. It's data and AI, but will be the same with the different countries, different states. We will see this in 10 years or in 20 years.
And on that point, California has always been at the forefront of data privacy rights and regulations around AI. So currently they're proposing like 7 different bills with all different frameworks for potentially covering AI. And they're the ones who, interestingly, kind of to counter your point, they define generative AI as incredibly broad. They literally say generative AI is a system that is trained on data. And that's their legal definition that they want to propose. So when you think about that, it's like, how much is it actually going to cover?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like any sort of model or algorithm you have that trains on some type of data now needs to go through this regulatory process of, you know, keeping track of what data they're collecting, how they're processing that data, what they're doing with it, how they're storing it, whether they're cleaning it, anonymizing it, etc. So in that, so, no, sorry.
And whom it's going to be available to. Because you store the data and then who gets it? Microsoft or the Congress?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Congress with Microsoft.
Yeah, but you know, I mean, that's what I think is the scary part. I mean, that's where I think where the data goes is, and I have to say for full disclosure, my career started in the direct marketing industry. So I'm like extremely sensitive to where data goes. And because I know all the fun stuff you can do with it once you have it. But in all seriousness, I mean, that is a big concern that I have, who holds the data at the end of the day? And is it Zuckerberg, is it Elon Musk, or is it, you know, the US Senate?
Money to compute and money to extract the data.
Yeah.
Because it's not easy to do it, and you need to invest in doing it.
Oh, well. I think we covered a ton in this. I mean, we talked about, you know, proactively.
Yeah.
I didn't see an arm. Okay, sorry.
Very simple question about the, so I've heard that maintaining data requires energy. And so the accumulation of more and more data is going to require, just to maintain it, it's going to require more and more energy and production of energy. I would love to hear what you think about that.
Yeah, in this moment, yes, okay, and sometimes it's exponentially, almost, okay, but the thing is, we are working not only in training more data, we are working in doing better computational resource to use less energy, okay? Because of that, is more or less every year is the same, okay? And yeah, the response is this one.
And actually, to that point also, so being a patent attorney, some of the technology that comes my way are ways to process data more computationally efficiently. Because as we train larger models, your training data sets have millions and millions of data points. So what sort of resources do you need to store that and then to be able to process it quickly? And if you think about it, like a lot of the apps you have on your phone, it's giving you back real-time results. So it's like, to create those real-time results, a lot of the time it has to happen on your device, which means now your device has to have like incredible computational power. So I think there are definitely improvements trying to increase the efficiency of our devices.
In the last presentation of OpenAI, they say that the new model increased the capacity in 5 times, but decreased the energy like 10 times or something like that. Because of that, they can have these prices every day or every month. Okay, the same price, the flat price.
I mean, and when you even think about like our mobile phones or our cell phones, like 20 years ago, they were totally different. You know, it's like, so it's constantly going to keep improving. But at the end of the day, what we're talking about, this entire thing, it's technology, and technology that's backed by humans and human brains, the OI, as you said, Yvonne. But it's backed by, and didn't ChatGPT go down like recently or? So
yesterday.
Yesterday. So it's like, So it's like
The world didn't end.
yeah, but there you go. But that's like when Instagram goes down, people. I mean, I laughed because I was one of them. Went to TikTok. Oh my God, what's happening? You know, the world is ending.
But it's the same.
But it's technology.
I was walking with Europe people, and ChatGPT goes down in the morning. Okay, yesterday, and the people say, "Oh, what's up? What can I do in my work without ChatGPT?"
Yes.
It's scary now that so many people rely on it.
Wow.
Like that too.
So it's like we
Talk to your neighbor.
look up at the world.
ChatGPT,
Yeah.
the original chat.
Yeah.
No, but many people do the interviews with ChatGPT or with something related. Because of that, sometimes when you go to the work and you don't have ChatGPT or some other AIs, you can have problems.
You know what GPT stand for?
Yeah.
Get people together.
Oh wow. I didn't know.
But nice try. So proactively engage, I guess, with AI technology, with social media, plan ahead, and technology. Be aware of the data aspects of it. Final thoughts, final takeaways from each of you. I don't know who wants to start.
Well, I think that the future is brilliant for the AI, and in this topic too. Okay, I think that in the future we will see, for example, my parent in the mobile phone. My parent can die in the future, and maybe I have my parent in the mobile phone saying things like my parent. Okay, my parent bot. I think that I will see in 10 years or 15 years. I am an early adopter of all the things. I have downloaded hereafter.ai, and I am training with my thing. Hereafter.ai is a service that you can train and you can give to another person, and this person can interact with your AI, with your twin, your virtual twin. Okay, and it's good.
I think for me, it's really one to watch. It's such a changing pace for everybody, but I think in the grief and the death space, it's extremely important that everybody does have legacy contacts, and what we can control legally, we should and do. I think there's so much good, but I also feel like there's a lot of bad. Processing our grief. You know, I feel personally that a funeral is the kickstart of your grieving process, and even people who don't go to funerals often have a prolonged start to their grieving process. So I feel like, some of these apps that promise we don't need to die or, never say goodbye, I feel like that's not necessarily a healthy way to process your grief. But in terms of keeping celebrities and political minds, it's an incredible space. So for me, it's just something about watching it and, educating my families on whatever I can, because it's just changing every 2 seconds. So
Only one
it's a lot
point
to keep up on.
Here, one point. If you take this celebrity and you put in an AI, maybe the Earth or the world don't advance so fast like today, because you use all the time the same things. Okay, if you have one Edison today, you have the things from Edison, but the Edison is time ago. Maybe you don't advance so fast. It's like the comfort zone. You can have this, or you can try to have new things. All right.
Yeah, I just think it's, I mean, the classic case is Kim Kardashian. I mean, what do the Kardashians not have a foot in? But that Kanye bought Kim for her 40th birthday, I think, a hologram of her dad singing happy birthday to her. Does anybody know about that? No? What? Oh my God. Oh, anyway, I'll send it to you all. It's actually really old. It's a really old version of the technology, but it's him singing happy birthday. Now, some people, she loved it apparently. Of course she did. They're not together anymore now. But anyway, but I just think that what works for one person might not work for another person. And I think that's the problem when it comes to grief. I think that's a serious problem for us to address. I think for celebrity and historical figures, it is great to keep their legacy alive. And for history, as I said earlier, historical reenactments and just bridging those generation gaps of people who fought in the war and what did they go through, and things like that. Like, even I know right now, when I FaceTime with my parents back home, like sometimes when I know my dad's about to tell me a hilarious story and I just know by the way he's getting geared up to tell me, I'll record it on a voice memo, because I'm like, because I work in the business I work in, I know life is short, and I know at any point that voice will be gone. And I'd nearly get emotional saying that, like right now, but I'll have that voice. So would I be ready to put that into an avatar of him? I don't know, but who knows? We don't know what we're going to feel like in the time. So, yeah, it's, for me, it's good and bad. I don't know, but legally,
But
it's.
are you telling your dad I'm recording now?
No.
Oh my God! Don't tell Chloe. Oh my God!
No, because
You
then
just
you'd
violated his
because
GDPR.
Then, I know, because then you'd get all like, don't be recording me. Wait, are you going to put that on the Google, on the cloud? Where are you putting that? And I'd be like, oh God. Then it's a whole story about that, and then he'd never tell me the original story. So yeah, I know. So sorry. I'm going to get him to write a contract. It's fine.
And I think from my perspective, I mean, to be completely honest, I hated AI once it became a public thing. I was so against it. Everyone who knows me was like, oh, you got to try it out. And I said no. And I probably didn't touch it till like a couple months ago, if even. And now I see its capability and I think it's phenomenal. That said, I think the caveat is knowing that it's not real, and it's only as good as we know as the data that goes into it. And it's smart, but it's also only as smart as the people who created it in the first place. So keeping in mind that what they're telling you may be kind of correct, it may also be wrong, always fact check. Like, don't rely on it. And I think that's where it leads to issues. And where they're trying to go with regulations is to alert people that it's created with AI and it may not be factual. States are not trying to prevent AI from blossoming and being used. They're just trying to, protect people and make the people smart enough to realize, okay, like I can't trust this bot right now.
Yeah.
So
we have another question, huh?
Just on the topic of dying healthily and adopting the implementation of AI pre-death and post-death. If anybody's thinking about it right now for their parents, I'm aware of this fantastic application that you can download onto your phone or your computer called Storyfile, I believe.
Storyfile.
So is it? Yes, exactly. So this is an application that you can hand to your grandparents or your parents, and I believe it gives them a prompt each day, or it gives them an opportunity to basically voice memo or write a story about their past based on the question that the artificial intelligence has just asked them. And it's a way of documenting your grandparents' past life, which we might have been alive for. I'm currently thinking about this for my grandparents, knowing that my grandparents were alive through the beginning of the world wars and what it was like in Ireland, a neutral country at the time. I'm fascinated by how you find out about it, and it's rare that I speak to them about it. So I would love that someday, post their death, that I would be able to dig into their stories that they wrote. And being from Ireland as well, we're great storytellers, so I'm sure the AI might have some trouble summarising all of that, but that is where artificial intelligence might be used in a positive way, pre and post.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you have the Show Up project.
It may be old information, but I tell you one thing, it's a very valuable thing to know.
Yeah.
Because things in the past tend to repeat themselves.
Yeah.
We have another question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was going to make a quick comment on easing this after death. So there is a grieving process, just as you mentioned, that there are the 5 stages to grieving. And there's the denial. Then you the stages lead on to finally bargaining and depression and finally acceptance. When you have memories of someone who is just recently deceased, there is the possibility of something called chronic grief, which we see as a pathology now in few patients, but there isn't this chronic stimulus of the person who's gone who keeps that grief process prolonged. So that's something that we might see if this were to happen.
Yeah, it's definitely, there's some risks. There's some, I mean, health risks to this.
Yeah, we saw a lot of that with COVID as well. That was a huge, because as a nation, as a world, we were grieving, you know, all of these deaths. I mean, that front page of the New York Times with all the pictures of everybody who died. I mean, if that didn't get you, I don't know what will. But it's also, we're grieving as well. It's not just a death of somebody. It's, you know, the climate, job loss, divorce. Like, we're all grieving different things at different times as well. So it's, you know, if you've just, I mean, I know I've personal friends who've gone through divorce, and, you know, if she created an AI of her husband just to kind of, is that healthy though? You know, I mean, but that's, you know, it's where does the line get drawn, where you actually have to rip the Band-Aid off, or the plaster, as we'd say back home, where you rip that off and you actually just have to deal with this loss. There's no point in prolonging it from a clinical, physical health or mental health point of view.
I mean, if it's a grandparent and you're not very close to them, it's just to get a documentation of their story, that's a different thing.
Yeah.
As opposed to keeping a person alive and giving you advice, and, you know, what would my dad say? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's so many positive elements to it, like the recreating of a story, and also even just I read a story recently of one woman who lost her mom, I think it was, and she said that she created this AI bot. I was about to say bat, AI bot to just give her encouraging words. You know, so like, I mean, part of me is like, you know, with my nerves coming up here today, if my mum, thankfully she is still with me, but like, if she wasn't, maybe I would like to hear her say, you know, you go girl, or whatever it is. Like, maybe, like, there's no harm in that. So there's definitely so many positives to it, but it's just that there's, like everything I keep saying, there's the negatives too, and it's how do we control it legally?
I mean, you need a chatbot and you need a good friend, you know, alongside of that chatbot. Erica, you had another question?
Yes, super quick. Adding to the question saying, but how responsible can someone be for what they're recommending after dying? Like for example, if you're asking your grandfather for advice, or if you're asking a question to AI and he or she or it, I should say, says like, seek for help, you're weird.
Yeah.
You decide to harm yourself because you don't like that answer. Please, how responsible can we hold them for?
Depending on the program. It's like ChatGPT. Yeah, depending on the programmers and the filters that the bot has.
Yeah. He did not divorce his wife.
But there is evidence of that. There is evidence of people who have engaged with chatbots and who have died by suicide because of what the chatbot said.
Wow.
And I mean, that is going to become more and more prevalent. And actually, I looked up that, so I went down a rabbit hole, as I do, and that chatbot was at the time engaged in over 42,000 conversations. And one person died by suicide, but like,
How they responsible?
and that's it. Who do you hold responsible? Yeah, that's the whole.
Hello, this is more just a comment on how humans deal with grief. And I'm thinking of Victorian time, right? So there's a couple of parallels. One is in the early 19th century, their medicine evolved to where they were doing autopsies. And they could cut a body open and medical students could look at what a body looked like. Well, what happened? People were stealing bodies from the cemeteries. So then there evolved security around the cemeteries. And I think there's a parallel here, kind of, in the legal sense. But the other piece I'm making, again, Victorian, is the phenomenon of hair jewelry, which, for those of you who don't know, Victorian, someone died, they would take a lock of their hair and weave it into a ring or a brooch, and they would wear it. They would wear their hair as a remembrance. And I just think it's interesting that, like, here we are, we're so advanced, we want that same thing. We're doing the same things.
Because again, it comes down to, and I'm probably saying like a broken record, but it really just comes down to we're humans. And, you know, even when and I think it was you who asked me like how I got into doing what I do. And I was in my 20s and 2 friends of mine died. And I was like, wait, what do you mean I'm mortal? Mother of God. When you're in your 20s, you don't have any concept unless you've been touched by death previously, which I hadn't. It was people were either old or they got sick. And all of a sudden here I was dealing with like 2 people in their 20s who had no business being dead. And so it's just, the whole thing is just mind-boggling, and we're learning as we're going, and we're dealing with griefs, and we're humans at the end of the day. And as I keep saying, we're imperfect, and so each person, each to their own. You know, it's.
Yeah. We have another question.
Thank you. Perhaps in the same legal sense, I'm just wondering if would we be talking in the future, or will this conversation entail that dead bodies are subjects or objects of law, and if so, then who would be the one entitled to claim those rights to privacy, or if one of her advices ends up being harmful, then which duty or right is going to be created, and how is that going to actually relate into the factual world?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard even to answer that question because we struggle with regulating the living person and what our rights are. And I think the question of what we are after death and our bodies and our data and everything is just not even a topic of mind at the moment. I think in that sense, the laws are always going to fall behind the actual technology and how we're using it, which is why we see like these regulatory schemes coming up as the technology is being used or developed. And it's still like we've seen AI come a long way within a year, 2 years, but the regulations and possible ways to like define that in a legal sense is still just so unknown.
And the thing is also, is the chatbot
Not really you, or at some point does it become your future self?
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, before I came to the US 30 years ago, I wasn't the same person. I mean, to a degree, obviously, but you know, you evolve, and your chatbot evolves as well. So is it really you that someone is recreating? I mean, initially, I guess, but how long does the you stay you? You know, is it really the same father that you're finding on this chatbot, or does your father change?
Well, and it's also like, because legally, the physical body, there is ramifications to that, and there is a legal thread to that state by state. Again, it can be very different. So that's why you're nominating a next of kin. And that's why legally you should all have a will, a digital legacy will, whatever. The more you can put into the will, the better, because you're nominating your next of kin. And let me tell you, and I'm not a funeral director, nor am I an estate attorney, but the legal things and the probate that if you don't have a will, and you might not think, oh, I'm not rich, so I don't need a will, or I'm not married, I don't need a will, but you do, because as I experienced, unfortunately, no matter what age you are, we can all drop dead tomorrow, sorry to say. And if you don't have anything legally bound, it's a shit show.
And
that's a very technical term. AI told me to say that.
One of the better practices is as you start building your own like real estate and assets, just get wills done. Obviously, don't do it every year because it can be very expensive after a while. But like a good example, my parents, once they knew they were having their first child, they had their first will done. And then once they knew they were having a second child, they had their will updated. So constantly being aware of that, because like you said, it can come at any time, but also your assets, your data, your being is always constantly changing. And I think a hard thing to deal with is if you have a will that's, let's say, 10 years old at the time you die, well, what about the home that you got, you know, in that 10-year time period? What about your cars? Like, it just becomes a lot more challenging if you fall behind keeping track with those things.
And also your social media
Accounts and everything else.
Exactly.
No, it's true. I mean, it's an asset. It is an asset.
Yeah. Well,
You know, it has a ton of your data in it, and with your data, it's an asset. Yeah.
Your cryptocurrency, songs and albums, music, movies you might have bought. I mean, yeah, books.
Literally everything
Like
you've
it's
written.
literally everything.
Yeah.
Like our digital print is huge.
And they do have an act in the U.S. The short term is RUFIDA, which basically allows you to allow the executor of your will to have access to all of your like crypto accounts, online accounts, so that they can then deal with your money as you want it to be dealt. Now, of course, for them to deal with it, you have to consent and say, I want my executor to do this. But they have those things now because we are keeping cryptocurrency, and when you die, crypto is not hard cash. So how are we going to deal with it, and how are you going to send that out to whoever's receiving in your will?
And you need to have somebody who has all your passwords.
Yeah.
And you better trust that person. Yeah.
Or have a legacy contact.
I have a legacy contact. Yeah. But then that person needs. Yeah. But so yeah, I mean, we could go on for another 3 hours, but I hope you found the conversation interesting, inspiring, thought-provoking. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for all the questions, for being here tonight, and thank you to our wonderful panel. And thank you for the sponsorship of the booze.
Booze by Barnes.
Booze by Barnes.
Trademark that.
Exactly, and for live streaming us today.
I will shout out, just since we're talking about tech today, so Mikey in the back, Legacy, celebrated as his company, but we're doing the live streaming, and that's like another thing that's been technologically added to funerals. I don't do a funeral now practically at all. I'd say 90% of my funerals are all live streamed.
Really?
Which is a total change, yes. Mikey is in business. But it's crazy. It's what people want, and they love it. So
Interesting.
since COVID, yeah.
Nobody physically come to the funeral?
They do, but a bit like tonight, yeah. People still come, but a bit like tonight, a lot of people, you've elderly people who are ailing and they just can't make it, and if you're doing an elder person's funeral, but also then the recording afterwards. I actually, for every client I have that don't get it recorded or live streamed, not everybody's into the live streaming, some people just want it recorded. The only people who have any regrets are those who don't get it recorded. Even though most of my clients at first, when I bring it up to them, they're like, oh God, recording a funeral? It's not a wedding, like what? But afterwards, if they haven't chosen it, they regret it. Because it is, unfortunately, it's like a wedding. Can you imagine, any loved one, just think of anybody and them passing away, or that lady's gone, I think, or them dying, and the amount of people who say, I'm so sorry for your loss, I'm so sorry. You're just meeting so many people. So to have a recording of, oh my God, they came, or such and such happened, or the speeches that happened. So.
Probably only for a generation, right? Because the next people don't care.
Well,
For your one generation up, perhaps it's important. But do I want to watch my grandfather's funeral again?
Well, but this is back to the point of keeping the generational and the history alive, right? So, I mean, the funerals that I do, people tell the most incredible stories, and it's the story of your grandfather or whatever it is, and so those stories get to jump on generation to generation. And actually, what I like to say at a lot of the funerals I do to inspire people is this quote that I've heard of: they say you die twice. Once when we physically leave our body, and a second time when somebody says our name for the last time. So
It's true.
And the
Yeah.
video was destroyed. Right?
Oh God.
Very good. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Job, panel.